Now, hello?
Yep, it's perfect.
All right, perfect. All right. That's the
Ready
best I
for
can
any?
do.
Yep, all good.
Good.
Nallé. All right, ready? Here we go. Nalle Grinda, my cousin, fellow paddle crazy aficionado. Great to have you on the show. As you know, this is all about the joy of paddle. And I want us to get started by understanding how you got into paddle. I know you began in Acapulco, and that must have been on the original courts when you were in 1981. How on earth old were you back then?
Exactly. Yeah. Hello, Minter. It's a pleasure to be here when in discussing our passion, our common passion together. And yes, the first encounter with Padel is or paddle was in 1981 for me. I was 5 years old at the time. I was following my parents, obviously, around the world, and for holidays we ended up um, going to Acapulco with a group of friends, group of my parents' friends, and got acquainted with the Corcueras, the Enrique Corcuera, and we actually had to we got the joys of playing paddle while they started playing what they called at the time the World Championships, meaning the 20 of them gathering around the holidays of New Year's, and after a couple days, they decided to, oh, you know what, we should have the kids play, and so we played. There was like maybe 6 or 7 kids of us, or eight, I guess, to make four pairs, and we played the unofficial first junior championships.
Way to get ranked in the world, right?
Yeah, exactly right, and I ended up winning actually.
Yeah.
It's funny because this is a funny story because I only found that out a few weeks ago. I called Enrique Corcuera Jr. To congratulate him on opening his first club in Texas. He actually himself got into the paddle business now, and I sent him that photo because he's obviously gathering a lot of memorabilia of the times, and he said, "Oh, yes, that's my mother giving you some pesos because you beat me in the final of that tournament." And I was like, "Oh wow, that's so funny," because I didn't know who I played, obviously.
So just going back to that court. I mean, obviously you were 5 years old, but what do you remember about it in terms of the funky elements of it? Because as I understand it, each of them was a little bit different in Acapulco in those days.
Yeah, it was actually a very interesting. So I don't have specific remembrance of that specific court, but I do have a remembrance of the whole dynamic, and it was very fun because every house had a different court with different specificities, and every house had their different rules. Because on that court, for instance, there was an AC unit in the back of the in the back of on the back wall of the house that was pointing out into the courts. So anytime a ball would hit that AC unit, well, they would have to play a let. Some other courts, and the shapes of the wall were never similar. Every court, first of all, was in hard court. The sizes were different, and some of the shapes of the walls were even different. Some courts had on one side a very low wall that was maybe 1 meter tall, and on the other side had walls because it was a retaining wall to the hill. The wall would be 9 meters tall. You see, and so there's a long some walls went all the way back all to the net, and some houses had walls that were only staying 3 meters back from the back wall. So all these rules were very different, and they were adapting to the actual specificities of the court. I remember even one court, one house where we played, and where you were not allowed to smash the ball out of the court. You would get penalized for that because the neighbors were complaining so much about the balls that the host had decided that any ball would go outside the courts, even having been touched the ground before, would be declared a losing point.
It reminds me very much the beginning of Jeu de Paume or Real tennis, where each of the kings had their own courtyards and their own rules and their own windows and all that. So that was that's a wonderful story. Tell us, Nallé, what is your involvement in padel today?
Today, I mean, I've been always kind of involved as a player, even as a club owner. I owned my first club in Nice in 2003. Back when I was playing, I'd say in the French national team and at my highest level. And I've always, even since I came back in the US in 2010, was trying to facilitate the implementation of paddle courts. So I was selling courts, counseling, advising, taking part ownerships in clubs. But it was always as a hobby on the side of my real estate company that I was running. Today, for now, for a year, I've totally decided to completely allocate 100% of my time into development of paddle through my club brand. It's called Padel X. We partner with a group of Chilean partners that are very big in real estate and the wellness or sports facilities clubs in Chile, and we have, I believe, come up with a very interesting and strong concept around the quality of paddle and the quality of the infrastructure for paddle for the US. We today have signed clubs that are already in construction as we speak. One is downtown Miami, right next to, in the middle of downtown, cannot be more centric than that, next to the Heat Arena, next to the Arch Center, the Opera House in Miami. And the second one is in Boca Raton,
Florida.
Boca Raton, Florida. Both clubs will host at least 10 courts, and we are actively about to sign a place in New York, and more to come. The difficulty today is to find locations. Obviously, real estate prices in the US are very high, so I think there is a lot, and that's one of the reasons for the slow development of paddle in the US. Is it's a lot of people, a lot of companies, a lot of venture capitalists are very keen on opening and starting business in the US, but very few actually succeed at doing it. So we're us included. So far, we haven't opened yet. We're right now in the permitting process, and we'll be starting construction sometime in July, August. Hopefully, how everything is going a bit slow.
It's very similar to the situation, at least in England, where there are still only 250 courts, and the real problem is constantly there's a lot of interest, a lot of money ready, but the planning issue remains the problem. But the other thing that the United States is facing, of course, as fellow Yanks, is this other game. Some people call it a sport. I don't. Pickleball. It seems to be the rage in the United States, and it's so much easier to build. You don't need walls. You just put lines on a court and put up a little net, and there you go. Yeah. How do you think that battle is going to go between paddle and pickle?
Well, I listen, as a paddle fanatic and always been a big defender of the sport. I don't see it as a battle, honestly. I think it serves two specific purposes. I think it can be very complementary. In our club in Boca, we actually even considered including some pickle into the paddle clubs, but after all, we decided not to because of various reasons. First of all, the sound, compatibility. A lot of people don't necessarily are not the same crowd. It's not at all the same business model because you don't charge as much for for pickle as paddle. And for one of the main reasons, as you said, is that pickle is free and paddle takes a lot of money to set up, and obviously for the same reason is costing more money to play. So it's two different business models. It's both sports. You gotta call them sports because they are played at a professional level. Both of them are going to face I believe, different challenges and have different advantages. And the one for pickle is obvious, and I see it here in in the Hamptons, as where I am right now. You know, the interest for both sports is quite large, and obviously the pickle is easy. You just paint a couple lines on the ground and you're done, and you start going. I even saw some pickle courts here,
Huh.
and I'm not sure how that plays out with the balls and the bounces and so on. But then I think that Padel as a show, as a sport, is far superior, and and pickle as a hobby, as a sport or athletic activity, for a lot of people makes a lot of sense too. You know,
Yeah.
people don't necessarily can or want to have a physical exercise as hard as paddle, and you know, for people like that, I see that as being a great compliment, actually. And I say it really in a I say it even for myself. You see, it's a great way of playing a racket sport with kids and grandparents and the whole family playing the same game. Whereas tennis definitely is not pleasant if you don't have, first you play in singles, but second, even if you play in doubles, if you don't have four players of the same skill level, then everybody is annoyed. In
Hmm.
paddle, that's not so true. You can always compensate. And we had, yeah, last night a great game where I played with my girlfriend, who's a beginner, against my sister, who's confirmed, and her husband, who's I'd say a medium intermediate player, and we had
So
a great time.
four very different levels.
Four very different levels, and we had a great time. And we decided to give it a try today on the pickle court, and I'm sure it's going to be fine too, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm not one of those um terrorist absolute obsessed players of one sport. I have obviously a huge preference for paddle, and there's no comparison in my opinion, but I do understand people who want to play pickle.
All
But
right.
as a show, as a
Yeah.
business, as a business, and as a player, I 100% paddle to pickle.
I'm so with you. Padel, paddle. America has to do things differently yet again.
Yes, you know, it's you know, I don't even know. We actually had that conversation with my friend Wayne Boych yesterday. We were on the court playing. He just had I don't know if you know, but he just opened. He's opening actually today. The first paddle club in Manhattan, and today is the opening. And so I was he was on CNBC and Bloomberg talking about this, and he's obviously saying paddle, you know, very American wise. And I say, Wayne, you know, what do you think about this? Don't you, we've been fighting to differentiate the game from all the other paddle games, the platform, the pop tennis, the this, the that, even the pickle. And so, yeah, but you know, in the end, they all went on with their own name, and you know, it's just paddle. You spell it the same way, Padel. You know, even you know, we were talking about the even how the Spaniards were saying it. You know, they don't say padel, they say padel. You know, they don't. So you know, we play
Accent on
with
the A.
words. Yeah. So we're playing with words. I think the most important is that we have our own spelling. That's what really matters. Whether uh, English people or English speaking people say paddle or padel or so on. As long as we write it, we don't write it Paddle. I think we're good.
Well, it certainly fits for my friends down in Philadelphia with Padelphia. And then the other thing are like the names of the strokes, like Bandeca or, you know, Bajada, as opposed to the ways the Spaniards pronounce La Bajada or La
Yeah,
Bandeja. We're
Yeah.
going to get involved. I want to talk to you about you and your paddle. So one of the questions I think is fun is to find out, how do you describe yourself as a paddle player, as an animal? What kind of animal are you on a paddle court?
Oh, what kind of animal? That's I would be an older bear today. If I had to say anything, I mean, as you know, I'm pretty tall, and I have a pretty big overhead, and and I'm a lefty. So, if I had to, I mean, I've totally formatted my game and learned watching Juan Martin Diaz. It was my idol when I started in 2000, 2002. He was the number one player in the world and the best, and some say, greatest player of all time. And he was lefty. So I was obviously trying to copy that, which is a very difficult, style of play to copy. But I'd say I am that kind of player. I'm very offensive. Today's comparative would be Arturo Coelho, who's number one in the world. But I never even. He
And
plays
a
a different
lefty.
game,
And a
and the
lefty.
lefty, of course. Yeah, that's why I'm mentioning those guys, because very similar in the way that they never relentlessly attack. They relentlessly move forward, and that's what suits my temperament and my game as well.
Wow. I see cat-like attack ability that you have, Nalle. What
Uh,
about what's your favorite shot?
oh, the overhead. My favorite shot is by far, and it's funny because as much as the overhead, when I say the overhead is the hitting overhead, is my favorite shot. The bandeja is my least favorite.
Hmm.
So
It's overhead,
it's
but not
something.
as much.
Yes, because I have a normally big and good overhead, and I can say that with pretty much confidence of many years of playing, and I've been told that all the time. But to the same reason, I have a abnormally bad bandeja because I never hit it. I never hit one. Whenever the ball is over my head, I tend to hit the ball as hard as I can.
All right. Well, the next question could be involved, but what's the shot that you in your mind would like to improve the most?
Oh, there you go.
Ha!
definitely the definitely the bandeja, because as I don't get younger, I
Yeah.
tend to not have the speed or the legs, or to get under the ball that fast to hit the ball from any point, or even the strength, because and actually the balls have gone a bit softer in the years. The courts have slowed down, so all these conditions don't help me. I used to be able to hit the ball from anywhere from the court out through par three, or all the way back to my court. Today is less true. The courts are slower, and so I have to definitely get better on my bandeja to be able to control and not lose the net, because people don't understand that the goal of the bandeja is not an offensive shot, is to not lose control of the net. And people tend to lose that in their mind. They always go for a bit too much, and the ball comes off the walls a lot and gives the chance to the opponents to take the net from you.
I would say that's one of the confusing things of watching the pro tour. I feel like they tend to be more in a whip, like a vibora. They rarely do as much with the bandeja, I feel, than they do the vibora.
Okay, well, I think if you actually, next time you watch a game, you actually take your pen and your pencil, and you count that out. You will be surprised, especially in outdoor conditions,
Mm.
how many bandejas they do. A guy like Sanyo Gutierrez, or
Hmm. Or
obviously,
Bella.
or Bella, they will hit. You'll see, not 50-50, maybe even 60-40 in favor of bandejas. They
Hmm.
do a lot, because when you have lobs that are coming from 30 meters in the sky with the sun and the wind,
Good point.
you can't hit it. You just gotta try to
Get it
avoid and
back.
lose it.
Yeah,
I was
exactly.
just watching and even if in the biggest condition in Valladolid yesterday in the finals, you would see even the biggest hitters in the world, like Tapia and Coelho, would be pushing the ball.
Yeah,
Not,
Martin
you know,
Deneno, he had the same sort of idea, just getting it back.
yeah, because it's really you can hit as far, these, especially at that level, you can hit the fastest, hardest vibora that you can. It's bread and butter for them to get
Absolutely.
it back, and even to use the speed and use the rebound of the walls to take the net away from you. So they tend to, I'd say, even to play 75% for 3 bandejas, they'll play 1 vibora.
Thanks for the correction. Excellent. So what about your the funniest thing or experience you ever had on a paddle court? Does one come to mind for you?
Oh, so many, actually. I mean,
well, that's so great to hear.
Even, I mean, like I said, it's such a great game. Even yesterday, we're a band of players that, since I moved to Miami, have played together, I don't know, over 3,000 times. The same 4 players. I'm talking about, Wayne Borch, Willy Alcorta, Gabi Meana, and myself. Since, I introduced them to the game back in 2013, 14, when, they first time we built the court down in Miami. And again, at the best level in the US and definitely in Miami, we were, 4 of the 6, 7 players we're talking about. So again, we still played yesterday, haven't played in a while. We play much less together than we used to because the group has spread out a bit more. There's so much more activity. Everybody's doing kind of building their own network and their own clubs and here and there. And so, but still, we got together. We haven't played in months and so on, and we had some amazing points because we know each other. We're 2 lefties with Wayne, so we know we both hit the ball pretty well. We end up being outside and playing through the glass, through the door, over the net, into the net, and the points go on forever. And so it's really amazing how much I always tell myself, wow, it's incredible how, this doesn't go away. It doesn't matter how, of course, I'm less physical than I used to be 15, 20 years ago, but I'm still having as much fun, if not more. Because today, I'd say the result counts a bit less, and the mean or the actual match or play or pleasure of just hitting the ball, feeling the ball well, and so on is greater. But yeah, I mean, we've had some amazing games throughout the years. I had some great pleasures, getting to the semi-finals of the European Championships in 2007 was a big one. Being the first team to beat a Spanish couple in a FIP event
Wow, nice.
was a big one, and representing France, representing my home country to play in international events for 10 years. And now I'm looking actually forward to, because now, the FIP is doing senior tours and senior competitions. So I'm going to be playing next year, or competing to get into the French team to play in the plus 45s. So all this are great memories.
That's beautiful. So what about life lessons? I think sports in general is a great way of learning things about life. But in paddle, what sort of life lesson is you taken away from since 5 years old, you've been playing paddle? What worked to you?
Well, I think, as you said, paddle, but sports even more so in general, are a great lesson of life because, every day you have to compete and you have to lose. You have to learn how to lose, and you have to learn how to reminisce on yourself. In French, we say se remettre en question. You have to, all the training and all the hard work, and eventually every week there's only one team that wins the whole week. Everybody else loses. So if you have 32 teams, there's 31 teams that are losers. Only one that actually comes on top. So you have 90+% chances of losing every week. And yet again, you have to get up and you have to, remettre en question. I don't know how you can translate that into English.
Be critical about yourself, maybe, at least.
Yeah, be critical, or yeah, exactly. Like really reset your mind and to try to be better and get better to avoid losing next week, and then you lose again. And anyways, that's what happens in real life as well. You have setbacks in real life, and I feel that having all the background in sports, it gives me the skills to rebound much easier than other people I see around me that eventually have not had that chance of having a sports career all their life.
In a mashup of the two last comments you made about the fun shots is in Padel House I saw, and I don't know how generally it's there, but they have this thing called push it, where after you've done a point, you like it, you hit the button and they will capture the last 30 seconds, which is kind of fun. It's a great way to document the fun that you had on the court. And of course, the other thing which I love about Padel is that the players will actually commend each other on great shots. It's not about winning the point. It's about having good paddle. And yet, when I look at those shots, when I do the video at the end, I come back, oh, that was a great point. I look at it, I'm like, oh my God, I was terrible. Or I look terrible, So that notion of self-doubt or criticism of self, you need to bring that reality with you back off the court to see how you can improve and remember some humility.
100%. And you have no idea how many times, it's funny, there's a phenomenon right now in the US going with Red Paddle, because Red Paddle is the first system. I don't know if you've heard of this, but it's the first system. It's a rating system, and it's an AI rating you, and not yourself. And it is incredible because I'm talking to the founders of this, and 99.9% of the people, when they're asked what their rating is or should be, they always think they're better than they are. Me included, me included. And then when you have an AI that's actually telling you that the ranking or so that you have, or the rating that you're getting, you cannot. It's the same AI for everybody, right? So you can, of course, there's flaws. There's depending on where the first person, because the first coach has to rate you, give you a temporary rating, and because you started that rating, whether you go up and down, that's up to the AI. But it does influence eventually until you play 100 matches or 50 at least. You do get some kind of advantage from the rating you get in the first place. But anyways, it's amazing how even all the people who are beginners, intermediates, advanced players, they all want to play with better players. Oh no, I'm bored playing with players lower than me and so on. I want to play. Yeah, but you have to think that the people that play better than you, they think the same way you think about the game.
Of
so
course.
They want to play with players above themselves, so they're never going to want to play with you. You just got to play with whoever is willing to play and be humble about it, and let the results talk for yourself. And if you start winning and playing better, you'll get to play with better players. And it's always fun to see. It's a great school of life, like I just said. And it's also a great, in that same way, of humbleness, because I tell all the tennis players, I tell them every time, if you want to get better, because tennis players are really good, they get to a point, then they have a plateau where they have to learn to play with the walls, for instance. And until they accept to look bad and lose points and let the ball go into the walls and look like a fool, they're not going to get any better. And it's just you got to be humble. You got to accept that tennis is a game of winners. Paddle is a game of no mistakes.
This is something you taught me.
Yes, exactly. Paddle is a game of no mistakes. The winner at the end of the match is not the one who's hit the most winners. The winner at the end of the match is the one that's hit the last unforced errors. Always.
Fabulous. Nalle, one word about the future of paddle or padel in the United States, which is basically your country these days.
Yes. I mean, listen, that's it. There's no turning back now. There's two, the hype is here. The demand is there. We're having very important, some I've named, some I haven't. I want to say business people that are now getting involved, that are investing. We have amazing events coming that are not been announced yet, so I can't announce anything yet. But there's even this year a huge event coming in October. So there is plenty of every light is green. But now we need to convert, and I believe that Pickle is doing us an amazing favor. I think it's forming the American population to an alternative racket sport than tennis, and I think that anywhere Pickle has landed, which is pretty much almost everywhere now, is a very proper environment for Padel to engage, because I think that a lot of people play Pickle because it's the last best thing, but they don't know about Padel. And as soon as they're going to get exposed to both, they will convert to Padel. And not everybody, but if I had to put 75%, I would say, and I think that they should coexist. People look for different things in different games, in both different games, and I believe that that's what's going to happen. I think, yes, we're not going to have 50,000 courts in the next 5 years, like Pickle is kind of going to, because of the cost of the infrastructure and permitting is different. But even if we go from 160 courts today or 200 courts to 10,000, or forget about 10,000, let's even say 5,000 in the next 5 years, that's a huge increase. It's huge, So it's going to take a little time, but we are at Padel X are definitely acting as it was a certain thing. We're investing all our time, all our resources, and all our money, and we're going bold. We're building big clubs straight, because yes, we know that the demand for courts is gonna it's gonna be stronger than the supply. So we're going straight in. We're not building 3 courts and see what happens. And that's my belief. My belief is that we're going to need tens of thousands of courts in the next 10 years.
Which means we're going to need a lot of good pros as well to help, bring the people in from the other sports, because that's a challenge. If you don't have a proper paddle coach who's not just like a tennis convert, but a real paddle player who knows the strokes, knows the tactics, really is going to be difficult. It reminds me, Nalle, of something that's happened at the Queen's Club, which is my club in London, where they introduced 2 outdoor paddle courts, beautiful surface and, panoramic. And the thing that's happened, where they have 4 other sports, rackets, jeu de paume, lawn tennis, and squash. And what they found is that paddle is the only one that unites all 4 sports. It brings everyone together. True. And that's such a beautiful thing.
You have to know, and this all comes from the DNA of the game. We didn't mention this, but because people do give me this, they tell, but why is paddle going to take over and not Pickle? Or, because that's the way the DNA of the game was created by Enrique Corcuera and his friends, Alfonso de Oenlo. My father was one of them. And they all sat down and they're like, fuck, we all love tennis. We all come from tennis background. So let's make sure that, of course, we're all tennis aficionados. And they start putting their head together. Okay, let's create a game. We're all now turning in our 50s. Some of us are overweight, but we all love the game of tennis. Let's just imagine a game, imagine a racket sport, and let's keep the good sides of tennis, and let's take away the bad sides. And the serve is the number one bad side, because serving overhead in that little square all the way over there, behind a net, and that's super short compared to the rest of it's nonsense. It's total nonsense. Serve just should be like an introduction to the game. That's number one. And then we really like the fact, or the walls from rackets or from squash. So let's keep that. The ball is the best ball. I remember I had this conversation. They tried all sorts of balls before picking tennis. They've even thought about the racket ball, that's bouncing all
Bouncy
over the
Springer.
place.
Yeah.
Exactly. So the best combination for everything was the tennis ball. So that's the reason why Padel is so amazing, because it was created with the idea of let's create the ultimate racket sport with the strong sides of each racket sport that we know at the time. And that's the DNA of the game.
Well, Nalle, beautiful. Great to have you on the show. I love your energy. It's great to hear about what you're doing in the States, Padel X and more. I'll put all those in the show notes. How would you suggest anyone follow what you're up to? Maybe any other links or social programs, social sites you'd like to have in the show notes?
Of course. Listen, for now, as pretty much I think nobody is aware, but we have chosen at Padel X, because we are not pitching for investors right now. We've chosen not to publicize too much about us. We'd rather be, create a big bang once we are open, ready to go. So we do have a landing page. That's padelx.us on the internet, and we do have an Instagram page, but that's pretty much it for now.
Watch this space.
Yes, exactly. We're going to start marketing our site in Miami as soon as we have the permits, because I don't want to be saying paddle coming soon, like a lot of clubs that have done, and a year later we still have no paddle on the courts. So the last hurdle for the first location and the first round of marketing is going to be when we get the permit, and that should be in the next couple of weeks.
It reminds me of when the software business was launching back in the heyday in the 1980s. They would say, oh, we got this great launch is coming. We're working on it. The bugs just getting fixed. And then we came up with a new term of vaporware. Where is it? So it makes me think of paddleware. Where's the paddle? All right, listen.
Yeah.
Nalle, thank you so much. Vamos.
Vamos. See you soon on the courts.
You betcha.